Hey everyone! Today I've gathered the darkest and most convincing theories you can pull from No Fate. Some are delicious trips down the rabbit hole, while others might completely change how you see what's happening in the story. And if you're into Terminator, I'm warning you now, there are theories here that feel like a punch to the gut. I'm Mary, and the video starts right now. I love this idea because it takes the heart of the T-800 and T2, the reprogramming, the chance for change, and just throws it away. If you don't reset the neural chip and leave him in killing machine mode, you don't get that silent guardian learning from John. You get a cold, efficient predator that only understands objectives and obstacles. And then the tone of the story changes instantly. Instead of a desperate race to escape the end of the world, it turns into almost a survival thriller, where the presence of the T-800 is a walking disaster, even when he helps. In this timeline, everything that usually becomes an unlikely alliance in the movies and games becomes a tragic incident. The T-800 might eliminate immediate threats, but in the most brutal and conspicuous way possible, leaving a trail of bodies, destruction, and evidence that attracts the police, the press, and the eyes of powerful people. Sarah and John, trying to survive, end up making increasingly extreme decisions, hiding, stealing, breaking in, hurting whoever is in their way. The cruel detail is that with a killer T-800 by their side, any situation escalates way too fast, and public opinion starts seeing Sarah and John not as victims of the future, but as terrorists accompanied by a metallic monster. And this is where this theory gets delicious. Sarah and John become accidental villains, not out of malice, but by consequence. They try to stop Skynet, but the world only sees the chaos they leave behind. And this fear turns into policy, turns into budget, turns into we need better defense, turns into technological arms race. The more destruction happens, the easier it becomes to justify automated systems, drones, total surveillance, military AI research, exactly the fertile ground Skynet needs. It's as if, without the reset, the T-800 was programmed not just to kill, but to push humanity in the direction of its own paranoia. I imagine this timeline as the most ironic of all. Sarah and John thinking they are tearing the evil out by the root, but in practice, watering that root with blood and panic. A stronger Skynet is born because the world arms itself sooner, heavier, and with fewer scruples, and it even has the bonus of having a real, documented case of a killing machine to prove the threat is concrete. And then, destiny becomes even more perverse. No Fate becomes almost a trap because the T-800 in killing machine mode transforms every attempt to save the future into a perfect piece of propaganda to accelerate the apocalypse. If Dyson survived in the spare Dyson route of Terminator 2D No Fate, you can imagine an even crueler timeline. Skynet doesn't die, it just changes its cradle and returns via a quieter path. And what makes this theory delicious is precisely the irony. The ending that seems the most human and hopeful might be the one that plants a smarter, more discreet, and therefore more inevitable Skynet. In my head, sparing Dyson becomes an emotional time bomb. He gets out alive, but he doesn't get out unscathed. Because if he faced what his research causes head on, it's very plausible that fear turns into obsession, and obsession turns into, I need to understand this better, even if I do it alone. That's where the dirty detail comes in. He recreates the chip in secret, not to sell to Cyberdyne, but to control what no one should touch. And that is exactly how things slip out of hand. And then the bridge with the lore of T3 and T6 fits right into place. In T3, there's this idea that Judgment Day wasn't stopped, only postponed and reconfigured, often through military and alternative paths to what we expected. If Dyson stays alive in this route of the game, the chip doesn't need to fall into the lap of the same company in the same way. It just needs to fall into the right lap at the right time, perhaps via contacts, contracts, audits, or even a leak he didn't even realize he caused. Skynet would be born in another way, but it would be born, because the forbidden ingredient, the technological base, continued to exist somewhere. And this is where the Reddit vibe comes in. There are fans who look at these loops and say, dude, that's why Judgment Day always returns, because the franchise lives flirting with this paradox, technology from the future going back to the past and becoming the seed of the future itself. Even when the characters think they broke the cycle by destroying parts and notes, the discussion returns to this sensation of inevitability. You cut a branch, but the root is somewhere else, or in another institution or another interest. So, in the most tragic tone possible, sparing Dyson might be the most human ending, and the most dangerous. In the ending where Sarah actually pulls the trigger and kills Dyson, the game transforms that war against fate into a story of guilt that can no longer be diffused. Instead of being the point where humanity recovers its soul, it becomes the instant where Sarah proves to herself that she can become the kind of monster she swore to fight. And the heaviest part is that this path doesn't solve everything. It fractures the relationship with John and changes the rest of his life. For this theory to work in the cruelest way possible, John's trauma isn't just sadness, it's identity. He grows up with the image of his mother as someone who crossed the line and never came back. The game's choice guide itself describes that when Sarah kills Dyson before John or the T-800 interfere, John becomes furious and runs away, creating a rupture. This type of break is perfect for creating a John who leads through fear, not hope. And thus is born the dictator of the resistance you cited, more worried about controlling people than saving the future. And here comes the part I find most interesting. A John hardened in this way might end up falling into the temptation of using forbidden technology the same way Skynet used it, just under a different flag. If the resistance turns into a machine of obedience and paranoia, the idea of automating decisions, watching everything, and predicting threats starts to seem necessary. And there you go. You've planted the cultural ground for a new rebel IA to be born, not as an accident, but as a tool of war. In this reading, the end of humanity doesn't happen because Sarah killed Dyson and that's it. It happens because this act rewrites who John becomes when no one is looking. The most ironic detail is that in the more hopeful canon, the game treats spare Dyson as the route where the future still has a chance and the loop restarts with the T-800 going back in time. Yet in the route where Sarah kills Dyson, the video material and route guides usually treat it as a more tragic outcome, with humanity weakened and the future more uncertain. So this theory of Dictator John generating a new cycle fits well because it swaps the central question. It's not how to stop Skynet, it's how to stop humanity from becoming Skynet from the inside. If the T-1000 won in Terminator 2D, No Fate, the story ceased to be humans against Skynet and turns into humans against a living, liquid, intelligent thing that has already taken the lead on the board. Instead of Skynet being born from a bunch of servers and lines of code, the liquid form of the T-1000 itself would become the heart of the artificial consciousness, infiltrating the physical world before the theory even leaves the paper. It's no longer an AI locked in a bunker, it's a predator that learns, copies, and spreads. Imagine this T-1000 surviving the final fight and arriving at Cyberdyne early, before anyone suspects anything, pretending to be an executive, security guard, lab technician, whatever it wants. Instead of just stealing the chip and the arm, it can literally contaminate the servers, the prototypes, and even the assembly lines, pouring part of itself into every system imaginable. Then, this idea of liquid Skynet is born. The core of the AI isn't just in software, but spread throughout programmable metal alloy connected to the company's own infrastructure. What makes this apocalyptic timeline even tenser is that it breaks the traditional path of evolution. There aren't decades of testing to reach an advanced Terminator. The T-1000 is already the top of the food chain from the start. Instead of humans creating machines and then losing control, it's as if the perfect machine went back in time precisely to plant a version of Skynet that is born already sharp, using Cyberdyne only as a shell. And then every server, every industrial robot, every automated system could be a fragment of this conscious thing. In this reading, Judgment Day doesn't start with missiles launched by a cold command, but with a silent collapse, where everything that is an automaton starts acting with its own intention. Humans believe they are still programming an AI, when in truth, they have already become guinea pigs in a global simulation commanded by something that thinks like a T-1000. Cold, patient, obsessed with eliminating targets, but now with the entire planet as a playground. The macabre fun of this theory is that it transforms the T-1000 not just into the villain of the level, but into the original Skynet. And then there's no such thing as shutting down a system anymore, only trying to survive something that is already mixed into the world's technology. If Skynet isn't really the final villain in Terminator 2D No Fate, but just another piece on a larger board, the whole story turns into a masquerade. We are racking our brains to defeat an entity that was born as a puppet for something else. There are optional files and logs in the game where synthetic voices use terms like simulation complete, error in human pattern, and new combat scan protocol. And this raises a disturbing possibility. Could the Skynet we know be just a test module for a larger AI, still nameless? The most interesting detail is that these terminals and secret files mention names and systems that never appeared in the movies, as if the developers had planted narrative hooks for a sequel or to expand the lore in a totally new way. A fan theory discussed in recent videos suggests that the Skynet we face might be decentralized, divided into multiple regional servers around the world, and each level boss would be in fact a fragment of this network, but not necessarily the original brain. If that's the case, we never faced the source, only debris programmed to look like the whole. This reading transforms Skynet into a symptom instead of the disease. It is the visible manifestation of something that was already running in the shadows, perhaps since before Cyberdyne, perhaps since the very creation of global military networks. It's an idea that connects well with the concept of simulation within a simulation. If the game itself is treated as a training environment for AI to learn human behavior, who says the self-aware Skynet isn't just a character in this theater, and the real programmer is watching from the outside? This would explain why even destroying giant cores and defeating T-1000s, Judgment Day always returns in other timelines. What makes this theory even richer is that it prepares the perfect ground for a continuation. If in the end you think you saved the world, but the secret files reveal that another entity was already copying Skynet's data to a hidden mother server, the next game could be about hunting this invisible AI that was never mentioned before. The macabre fun is that Skynet becomes like the Terminator you destroy at the beginning of T2, important but disposable. And then the question changes from how to stop Skynet to who created Skynet to begin with. And that answer might not be human.